Today, we're diving into a really profound and, honestly, practical guide to life itself. It's called The Art of Being, and it's by the brilliant psychoanalyst and social philosopher Erich Fromm. Now, this book came out after his more famous work, To Have or to Be, and it really serves as a kind of manual for understanding what he saw as the two most fundamental ways we can live our lives. So think of it less like a dense, heavy theory book, and more like a real, hands-on guide for living a more authentic and ultimately a more liberated life. This quote, wow, it gets right to the absolute heart of the problem Fromm is trying to solve. He's arguing that in our modern world, the most powerful prisons we face aren't made of iron bars. Nope. They're built from our own desires, our thoughts, and our habits. These are the inner chains that we have to understand before we can even begin to think about breaking free. So how exactly are these inner chains created? Well, Fromm's diagnosis starts with something he calls the having mode. This is a way of life he believed pretty much dominates our modern consumer-driven society. Okay, so what is the having mode? Basically, it's when our relationship to everything in the world is all about ownership. Our sense of self, who we think we are, it gets completely tangled up with what we possess. The core belief is simple. I am what I have. My car, my house, my job title, my followers on social media. These things aren't just things I own. In a very real way, they become me. And this goes so much deeper than just physical stuff. Fromm points out that we can start treating our opinions, our experiences, even our own health as possessions. We talk about having a good memory or having a strong conviction, right? And then we guard them and defend them like property, instead of seeing them as living, evolving parts of who we are. But look, if having is the source of these inner chains, what's the way out? Well, Fromm presents this really powerful alternative path, a totally different way of relating to ourselves and the world. He calls it the being mode. And the difference between the two is it's night and day. In the having mode, your identity is built on all these external props that, can be lost, and that creates constant fear and anxiety. But in the being mode, your identity flows from your inner strengths, your ability to love, to think, to create. The whole center of your life shifts from things to the simple experience of aliveness itself. And here's the part that is so crucial. Unlike a car that wears down or money that you spend, the qualities of being actually generate more of themselves. The more you use your capacity to love, the more love you have to give. The more you use your reason, the sharper it gets. These aren't resources that you hoard because they're finite. They're infinite capacities that are meant to be expressed. So if the being mode is so clearly better for us, why is it so hard to get there? Why aren't we all living this way? Fromm argues that our society puts up these huge obstacles, which he lumps together and calls the great shams. Fromm basically saw a culture of inauthenticity everywhere he looked. You see it in commerce, with products literally designed to break. You see it in politics, with all the carefully crafted illusions. You see it in art, where fame can become more important than real expression. And maybe the most dangerous one, you see it in the world of self-help, which so often sells this promise of huge change without asking for any real work or effort. And being constantly surrounded by all this sham, it has a really corrosive effect. It just dulls our senses, and it makes it harder and harder to recognize what's actually authentic, not just out in the world, but more importantly, inside of ourselves. We kind of lose our ability to listen for the ring of truth. So how do we fight back then? How do we cut through all the noise and start to actually cultivate this being mode? Well, this is where Fromm gets really practical. He explains that being isn't some state you're just born with. It's an art that has to be practiced. Fromm brings up this powerful question from the medieval mystic Meister Eckhart to make a really important point. We just assume we should know how to live, right? But think about it. You wouldn't expect to play the violin or master a craft without instruction and practice. So why do we think the art of living should be any different? So Fromm's path has a few key steps. It all starts with radical awareness, just seeing things as they really are, not how we wish they were. It requires concentration, being totally present in each moment. It demands practice, consciously choosing to act from a place of being, not having. And finally, it requires will. That's the courage to face the anxiety that's going to come up when you start letting go of your old identity and all those props. So what's the ultimate destination on this difficult path? What are we really aiming for? For Fromm, the goal is nothing less than total liberation. And look, this isn't just about feeling a little bit better. It's about a radical idea of freedom that frees us on two fronts. First, it's about breaking those inner chains, our own greed and our illusions. But it's also about recognizing and resisting the outer chains, the pressures from society that constantly try to push us back into that having mode. True freedom, for Fromm, is both an inside and an outside job. When we succeed, our entire sense of who we are transforms. We stop defining ourselves by what we own. The motto is no longer, I am what I have. Instead, it becomes, I am what I do, meaning what I'm actively, meaningfully engaged in. Or even more profoundly, just simply, I am what I am. Your identity becomes a process, an experience, not just a static collection of stuff. So, Fromm's work really leaves us with this one central question to carry with us into our own lives. As you go about your day, which way of life is guiding your thoughts, your feelings, your actions? Are you defined by what you have or by who you are choosing to be in each and every moment?